Right, okay, so I'm going to cover one now. This is from the 18th of December 2023. And this one I'm going to call Uprising, UK and Anarchy. It's probably what I'm going to call that, okay? Um, so, this has got a couple of different elements to it. So I'm going to do the dream itself, but I also wanted to then tap into something that also happened outside of my dream life, but into my wife's dream life, and that was really interesting. Okay, so this is my second time shooting this one because I went off on a bit of a rant. So I'm going to try and rein this in. Going to not go down that kind of route because the subject matter could easily cause this one to get banned. So I need to be a little bit more cautious, and I'm going to reshoot it in a better way. Okay, so as I said, Uprising, and this is UK and Anarchy. Right, so this is basically, so again, this is 2023, but I'm seeing like this is in the future, but it's not like the distant future. It's in the future. Obviously, we're already in the future, but you know what I mean. It's in the future, but it's not miles off of where we are right now. And it's basically where it seems that there's a lot of political positions and high authority positions have been actually filled by Muslims, okay, and specifically Muslims. And again, it's gonna take a certain route, obviously. And they ended up basically. I don't know whether they ended up running it. I think it was a separate movement, but I think they created the conditions for a lot of extremism and that kind of sentiment to rise in the UK. That's what I kind of felt about it, because of there was groups kind of rallying, and there was a kind of a push for political control and stuff like that. Okay, so and there's an image I'm going to give you right now, but I'm going to come back to and probably go in a bit more detail. But what I saw, you see, I was seeing through probably not my own eyes. I don't think. I didn't have a sense of my children, my wife being there. So I think that this could be me literally as a bystander watching an event. Okay, so I'm watching an event starting to kind of snowball. Okay, so I saw basically all these kind of guys, males, military sort of age, with machine guns and stuff like that. They're kind of they're pushing their religious Islam as a religious thing that's getting intertwined with the government sort of thing. Obviously, like it is in other countries, but it seems to be rising up to a certain extent in the UK. I'm not talking about right now. I'm talking about in this dream, of course. But there seem to be all sorts of problems. So there was lots of riots that seemed to be going on in the streets. There was cars on fire. There was just a bit of mayhem, really. Just a lot of anarchy. Okay, and as I said, I was just a bystander that seemed to be watching this all happen, and I ended up getting in a fight with one of these guys. With some of them at some point anyway. So they had like machetes, they had guns, as I mentioned, and they were attacking people. So I think I saw them actually like coming into people's houses and just attacking people, just no reason, just attacking people. And I ended up getting shot in this somehow, but I ended up getting shot in the side of the head, and everything just went black, completely black, and this is which was strange. Okay, so in the dream, I was hoping that I was dead. I was really hoping that I was dead. I couldn't. So it's basically so I could move on. So I don't know whether in this dream it was me, and I think it possibly could have been me, but something's happened, and I just want to check out. I don't want to be here anymore. But I realised that when I thought I was dying because everything went black, all that happened was I just kind of reacted to the shot, and my eyes were closed. So my eyes were closed, and that was the actual reason. And I kind of realised that it was just my eyes closed, and I just wanted to be dead, as I said in this scenario. So after the person had actually shot me, they kind of moved on. So they obviously presumed I was dead. As I said, my eyes are closed. I'm not moving. Um, and then as I open my eyes again, it's almost like, you're carted off by, like you see on TV, you get something happens and then you wake up in a hospital, that kind of thing. That's kind of what happened. I'm not sure if it was a hospital, but it had that kind of feel to it. It was either like either a hospital or a school. Maybe it wasn't either of them, but we were all held up in the hallway of this place, wherever this was, and we were all sitting down while these terrorists with guns are just kind of discussing amongst themselves what to do with us. So we're basically being taken as hostages in this thing. Where are we? Hostages, and it was obviously a continuation because I had a bleeding head, or I had like a real scar, or it was more like it was quite fresh, So I'd just been shot. I'd obviously survived. They realised I survived and they picked me up and they took me as a prisoner. But I was kind of trying to hide the fact that I'd been shot and all this blood. And I was kind of like tilting my head in a way that people didn't easily see that I had all this blood and stuff. So I was just kind of almost hiding this wound. I've been shot, as I said, should have been. It was a headshot. It was a proper headshot. It was like here. It was like almost like a. I don't know if it was a point blank, but it was it was kind of a headshot that you wouldn't expect to survive from. And as I said, so we're all. I'm kind of tilting my head and stuff like that. And also I was very aware of the fact that the bullet was still in my head. Hadn't been taken out. It actually got lodged in my head, and it was still there. And I was, as I said, I was turning my head, trying to disguise it. And as these terrorists were getting closer, I made a decision that I was going to attack. And I had an awareness that in my back pockets, my back pocket or something like that, I'd actually concealed 2 handguns. And so the plan was, obviously, when they got a little bit close, I was going to whip out these 2 handguns and I was just going to take out as many as I could. That was the plan anyway. And what happened was they started to get close, and I thought, right, this is perfect time for me to do it. So I pull the guns out and then I start clicking it. No bullets in either gun. So I don't know whether they'd actually, obviously, as I said, I've been like out, like knocked out or something. Whether they'd seen these guns, they'd just taken all the bullets out and then just saw whether I was going to attack, and then they would kind of have a good reason just to finish me off, really. Not that they really needed one, because obviously I'm a hostage, and it doesn't look like there's any kind of form of police around. It's just it's lawlessness everywhere. Okay, blah blah blah. Where are we? Yeah. As I said, guns completely out of bullets, and so then it was all a hand-to-hand sort of broke out. I guess like punching and blades and all sorts of stuff's going on, and it was just a horrible environment. Like it then, because it then flashed after this bit of a hand-to-hand attack going on, because I think it was me who sort of started it, but then it kind of broke out a bit more. Maybe they were sort of attacking other people and other people having to defend themselves, because they were already, if you remember, it's like this, they're already talking about whether they're going to kill us or keep us. So I think maybe some of us just thought, well, look, what's the point in hanging around waiting for them? Let's just do this now. It was kind of that thing. But as I said, I was the person who started it. So anyway, so then it's after the hand to hand, it then takes me even further forward in time now. So what it kind of demonstrated was that whatever this uprising that was happening, and again, I'm going to go into a bit more detail about what that looked like, is now it's firmly established, and society is just in a wreck. The first bit I saw was it just starting. It's like that first, lighting of the match, but now we're in, and the place is just burnt. Not literally, but what I mean is the place is done. It's just everywhere's a wreck. It's just a complete mess, complete breakdown, complete anarchy. As I said, I was talking about like cars on fire and all of that kind of stuff. Just nightmare stuff. And as I said, it skipped to the future, so a little bit further in the future. And I was just sort of walking around the streets, I guess, something like that. But I just saw women just staggering around, like, you know, dressed almost, let's just say scantily dressed, okay? So not wearing much on the top, not wearing much on the bottom, and they're just in heels and stuff, and they're just falling over their own feet. You know, they're just out of it, just completely out of it. And it was like, they were just so traumatized, or they were drugged up. It was, you couldn't really tell, but they were just a shell, just wandering around the streets. It was just horrible, absolutely horrible. And as I said, yeah, while I'm seeing all of this, I'm seeing loads of fires going on, just fires in the roads, like somebody's, you know, like set a bit like, you know, where you see like an oil, what's it called, like oil can thing, you know, and it's like a that sort of thing. It's all flaming, and everything's just on fire, and it's just a complete, as I say, complete nightmare. And all these women, as I said, walking around traumatized, drugged up, half naked, and loads and loads of women are all put into prostitution. So as I said, this is society full breakdown now. And and these women, they're just going to be, they were just being handed around like they were worth nothing, absolutely worth nothing whatsoever. And you had all these, basically like a terrorist organisation really that was in charge, and these women were just being handed around to all sorts of people. You know, it would be a higher up person, oh, here you go, here's a woman, you know, as part of like a business deal or something like that. But it was so ridiculous, actually. In fact, and these women would just be passed from one person and then like flung across to another person, and off you go with this bloke, come back with that bloke, right, off you go with this bloke. It was just horrendous. And as I said, yeah, from higher ranks through to lower ranks, everyone was the same, you know. And these women are just seen as completely disposable. They were just used, abused, and thrown away. It was awful. And even to the point where, you know, where you would have somebody visit visit your home or whatever, and you would sort of greet them with, oh, can I get you something to drink? Can I get you, do you want anything to eat or anything like this? This was like, oh, I've got this woman. Do you want to, look, just go upstairs, you know, look, enjoy her, have fun, you know. It was, as I said, absolutely terrible. The worst kind of thing. I mean, to be a woman in this society was just absolutely horrific. Yeah. So as I said, yeah, basically the women were sex slaves. I mean, that's ultimately what it was. And to this new regime that had basically blitz attacked the nation. Okay, so they'd just taken over. It was like a riot style takeover, like a military coup that happened. They got themselves into the power position, but it felt like already they had players already in the in the kind of government situation anyway. So it was, and I mentioned about this in a minute, but it felt like we'd hit critical mass. We got to the point where there were so many people on board now that all the plans that they wanted to put in place, it was like all we needed is just a little nudge and regime change. Everything changed like overnight, very, very quickly. Yeah, so anyway, I'm going to go into my thoughts about this. So I expand on a lot of the stuff that I just talked about. So it was like, yeah, as I said, it was like that, like I was witnessing the actual moment of an uprising that was going to shape the future. I was there witnessing, seeing it happen, you know. But as I said, this was Muslim extremists. These were not standard Muslims. These were extremists, okay? But these, I would have said that more the Muslim leaders were not so much. They were kind of sympathetic, maybe. But I'll go back to the bit that I mentioned right at the very, very beginning, which probably didn't make a great deal of sense, but it will do when I elaborate. So, as I said, so basically, you know, I said I saw people and they had guns and they had machetes and they came towards me, then I got shot and all of this kind of stuff. So before that, I'm seeing them from afar. Well, I say afar. I'm probably seeing them from about 30 meters away, so not really all that far away, you know, not really all that far away. And I'm seeing like a religious leader who's standing on a box, so like a typical sort of, you know, evangelistic thing where you see somebody standing on a box above everybody and speaking to people. Yeah, so that's what was happening. This guy's a sheikh, so obviously he was a religious leader, and he's standing up and he's preaching to A lot of, again, these, as I mentioned, males in their 20s, 30s, military age sort of people, and he's very expressive with what he's saying, and really revving them up, like they're getting ready to do something. You know, that's what it's like. So he's preaching in the streets, as I said, and all these guys that are around him, so they're encircling him basically, this guy, and they're hanging on his every word. You know, they listen to absolutely everything he says. And he's like telling them what to do, but he's using scripture to back it up and all of this kind of stuff, okay? And they're all hateful words. And he's really pushing, that's just say, some of the religious books and stuff like that. He's using it, as I said, he's using their scripture. And there was a point where his speech kind of crescendoed, and they all kind of waved and like shaking their guns and knives, and then they set off. It's like they were given their marching orders. Right, everybody, just go initiate what we've just talked about. But they're all revved up from a religious point of view, you know, that kind of thing. And so that's what I saw. And then, as I said, I'm close, so I guess I'm a victim, quite an early on victim, because I'm so close to them when this is happening. And yeah. Where did I get to? Yeah, and as I said, at this point, it didn't feel like life was normal already. You know, so it felt like, as I said, that there had been some riots going on. There was civil disorder. It didn't feel like there was police or anything. They certainly weren't being shut down. Let's put it that way. So this was very, very open as to what was going on, and no one was shutting it down. As I said, burning cars and all sorts of stuff. So I guess it could well have been, you know, there was just not enough police to police this kind of thing. Or, as I said, they just stood back and let it happen. As I said, that the area was just pretty run down, and I just had this feeling of we'd hit a critical mass kind of moment of the population was there, the background support was there to topple the nation. And this was all the kind of smaller, let's say smaller religious, non-religious groups. Let's say what people identify as, so agnostic, you know, atheists, Christians, whatever it was, we'd now breached a certain level now, and the population had gone to more Muslim than there was anything else, and that was enough for them to, as I said, hit that critical mass moment. And then everything changed. Okay, they had the people in the right place, and they had the population, and it just changed. Obviously, I'm not saying this is what's going to happen. This is a dream, but this could be the sort of thing that does happen. I saw them waving flags, loads of flags and stuff like that, and maybe 10, 15 of them that were around this guy. It felt like this was not just, I'm not just seeing one thing happen here, I'm seeing a coordinated event. Okay, so this is this little collection of people that have come together here, but this is happening everywhere, you know, in all sorts of places in the UK, and it's all happening at the same time. So almost like, let's just say other political, non-political groups. I think you know what I mean when I say that. I don't want to mention the words, but I'm not gonna. Let's say a 3-letter acronym beginning with a B, that kind of thing, and maybe some of the other kind of groups that generally are more far left extremists, I would say, that go out and just decide to attack people and cause damage everywhere. We've got plenty of organisations like that in the UK, and obviously the US, and obviously other places as well, that are international groups that just create chaos, you know, in trying to make everything, you know, to make equal rights, or fighting for this, fighting for that. You're not. I mean, you're really not. All you're doing is you're part of the system that's bringing the world down. Is what you're part of. so I say coordinated, localized initially, but then going national is what it felt like. In the dream, I personally didn't have any fear. Okay, so I'm seeing all this happening and this sort of stuff happening, but I was willing to die for what I was believing in. And as I said, I mean, I mentioned I got shot, and I just wanted, and I was just sort of thinking, I just want to die. I just want to check out. I don't want to be here anymore. I've had enough of this place. You know, that's what I felt like. As I said, I don't know the background around why I'm only in this dream, but I'm not going to read too much into that. But I didn't have any thoughts about my family whatsoever. So whether that's because they weren't there, I don't know. But is that why I wanted to top myself? Well, not top myself. I didn't want to actually do that myself. But if they were going to do it for me, I wasn't going to stop them. It is basically what sort of happened. What also made me, which was interesting, and again this could be just coincidence, it did make me think of obviously the kill shot, the headshot. So this is in Revelation. Is it Revelation? I'm not sure if it is. I think it is. Yeah. So the where it talks about, I'm pretty sure, I wrote false prophet. I'm pretty sure it's the Antichrist. The Antichrist that receives a head wound that is a sort of head wound that should kill him, but he survives, and people kind of worship the beast. So this is the Antichrist, the one who is it like, I don't know why I'm finding certain scriptures I just knew really well seem to be eluding me at the moment as I'm doing these videos. It's really strange. But is he killed, or is he receive a headshot that it looks like he should die, but he doesn't? It says the sword. It says a more, you know, a fatal wound from the sword, but obviously that just means a weapon, doesn't it? It doesn't necessarily mean a sword, because we don't wander around with swords anymore. But it made me think of the potential false prophet. So the false prophet, there we go. That's where I think I'm going with this. The sheikh, you know, that kind of guy. He could have been maybe representing the false prophet. So the false prophet is the religious leader who is like the wingman of the Antichrist. So he's kind of there from a religious point of view and getting everybody on side from a religious point of view. And the Antichrist is sort of initially comes across as a kind of charismatic guy who's going to unite get the nations to cede him all of their power. Various different nations. It says 10 nations will cede their power to him, for him to act on their behalf, sort of thing, and he takes that power and he uses it. So I'm not going to go into any more detail than that. Now, the reason being is I went down a route, as I said, that I think would get this banned. So I'm just going to leave it there, and I'm going to go into another part, and then I'm going to finish off, okay? So this, as I said, this dream, was the 18th of the 12th, 2023. Okay, it's quite some time ago now, given it's August 2025. Now, so sorry, I said that. I'll say that again. December 2023, then in February 2024, so a couple of months later, my wife tells me about her dream. She has a dream that's really strange to her. Okay, so I'm just going to read what we've got here, and it links into what we've just talked about. And literally, that I'm talking about the uprising there. There's two little things in between, and then we're on to this dream. So there wasn't really a great deal that happened in between, actually. So actually, yeah, there's only one dream that was in two parts, actually. So there's not really much between it. And then my wife dreams about stuff that's got this Muslim again, really out of nowhere. It's very strange. So she said, so this is her telling me her dream, more or less. So she said in passing that she had a dream about me. She said, I came into our bedroom wearing a black burqa. So obviously the female outfit that some, let's say, sect, or if you call it a sect of Islam wear. Not all of them do, but a black burqa. So all you would be able to see is my eyes. That's it. Okay. And she said it was, I wrote down it was a black burqa. I knew what it was, but she didn't know what it was. But she said, she described it as she said, it's that black outfit, you know, with like eye slits. I thought, oh yeah, I know what you mean. And she asked me, in the dream, she asked me what I was doing. You know, I've come into the bedroom wearing this burqa, and apparently I had a camera set up downstairs, and I was going to go back downstairs, and I was going to make a video of some kind. In the dream, she said that as soon as she saw me wearing this, she started crying, and the dream abruptly ended. She said it was such a real dream that when she actually woke up, she had to check where I was and whether everything was still normal. So this made a massive impression on her, where she wasn't even sure if that was reality or not. You know, for a bit of background around, and this does happen quite frequently, is I'd specifically been dreaming that she would actually have a vivid dream. That's what she just described, a very vivid dream where it felt like it was real. Okay, and this is obviously because I wanted to come to faith. Of course I do. Of course I want the best for my wife, which is obviously to be in faith, and she's not at the moment. So, and it is August 2025, and she's not at the moment. And I said to her, like, well, why a burqa? And she said, well, it could have been the fact that I've been, watching some TV recently that had that kind of stuff in it. And I knew what she was referring to. She was referring to the program Homeland, where there's a CIA, the main woman in that is a CIA agent, and she's based in the Middle East, so she needs to kind of fit in. But she never wears a burqa. As far as I know, she never wears that. She wears a a standard headscarf, to fit in. And be respectful of the culture that she's in, because she's trying to get information from people. She's trying to blend in. Obviously, she does it really very well. And also when she finished watching that was several weeks before this dream. So there was a decent distance. And why would you be thinking about something 3 weeks ago? You're probably more likely to be thinking about stuff you're watching right now. And she was watching something completely different. Nothing Middle East or at all. We hadn't watched any films like that, as far as I know. Anyway, so thoughts on this. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what I just mentioned. So I had actually mentioned to her, I said the rapture's coming. I said, but there's many things that are obviously likely to change beforehand. And I said, I'm convinced that religion is going to play a key part. And also, as soon as she said it, I thought, wow. If I was going to do any kind of evangelistic stuff within the Muslim community, so in a hostile environment, essentially, where you could get, again, this is I don't know her situation, obviously, because if she was just dreaming a dream, so she wasn't. I can't feed it into obviously what my dream was about, which was kind of a little bit futuristic, but not that far off. But where society's broken down and it's a real mess. She didn't get that kind of indication at all. But obviously, the filming I'm doing secretively if I'm in a burqa, aren't I? I'm trying to hide my personality, my what I look like, and also at the same time, I basically thought, wow, preaching to them in a hostile environment via YouTube or something similar using a burqa is actually pretty smart. I'm kind of happy with how I kind of came across. I went with a burqa. I had a camera all set up, and I probably had a VPN, all set up, that kind of thing. That and as I said, I prayed previously. As I said, that particular prayer, and I felt this big prayer I'd done just before that she had this dream was one where I felt like I was very much led by the Holy Spirit. It was one of those where you're saying stuff and it's just flowing. Sometimes praying can be a bit of a struggle in that you're trying to think of what to say, but I think once you get going, a lot of the time it just flows. So this is one of these dreams where it was flowing. I was probably getting a bit upset. I would put here, there you go. I was very, very passionate about what I was saying, and this kind of prayer doesn't happen that frequently, because a lot of my prayers, I guess, are somewhat repetitive in a way. I'm thanking God for food, our home, and my job, protecting the children, and stuff like that. But then other times I'll go into something that's really on my heart. I've watched a video and it's really heavy, watching it, and maybe I'll pray about that, or I'll pray about somebody I've seen on a video, or something like that. Sometimes I go into stuff. It really depends on what's on my mind at the time. So as I said, that's kind of that's kind of, I think, as I said, where I wanted to go with it. I don't think I want to take it any further because, as I said, I'm going to be getting into some territory that could get me in trouble. Okay, I'll leave you with this parting thought, which is look into obviously Christian eschatology, which is the end times, what things are going to happen towards the end. You'll get that throughout the whole of the New Testament, but that's the best place really to find it. You do get some Old Testament stuff as well, but I would have said most of it's really in the New Testament, because obviously you've got Jesus talking about, when he comes back, what it's going to be like. And you get this across the Gospels, which are Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, but you also get it in a lot of Paul's letters where he talks about things that be happening, and then the ultimate one really is Revelation, which is very symbolic, and it's all about all the judgments that will come in the 7-year period, which is called the tribulation. Okay, that's our end times, which of course is true. It's all going to happen. Obviously, stuff that's in Revelation is somewhat symbolic, some of it. So some people will differ on things, because anything that's symbolic is going to happen a matter of, it's going to be their opinion, isn't it? It's not going to, if it's as obvious as this person is going to do this and that's going to happen, well, there's not much you can really say around that. It is what it is, and it's obvious, But there's some stuff that's a lot of stuff is up for interpretation to a certain extent. Okay, and I think that's a reward. I think God is really wants people to continue to read and continue to read and continue to read, and gives and gives revelation. So you might read a passage and you've read it several times, and then you see it again and you see it completely differently. And I'm like that with dreams. I get this what we would call kind of like a progressive revelation. It happens over time. And sometimes I'll look back on my dreams. I'm like, yeah, I know exactly what I was talking about. But when I wrote it down, I was like, I haven't got a clue what this is. And that's happened this week, or over the weekend. I've had stuff that I've read and I thought, no, it's probably throwaways. It's probably nothing. And then suddenly it's all start coming together. And sometimes it even comes together even more after the video. So it's always worth looking at the comments to see if I've actually commented extra, because I might have got some additional revelation, and I'll put that in. So I did have that with a dream today, where I just realised a bit more, and I was like, actually this makes more sense now. But I didn't want to start all over again and film it all over again, which I have done before. I have done that before, and it was just too big a revelation. I just thought, no, I'm going to do this all over again. But this one I just added on. Other ones I sometimes just add on as commenting on my own videos, which seems a bit strange. But as I said, it's just if I want to correct something, like if I've done something wrong and I just slipped up just a little bit in a 45-minute video, it's like, do I have to really do this again and not slip up again? So I just correct myself. I am open to correction. Please correct me if I'm wrong. So I'm sorry. What I was saying was, obviously I've mentioned about Christian eschatology, so end times. I would suggest that you then look into Islamic eschatology as well, and you'll see how completely different they are, to the point where the Christian is pitched against it's the complete opposite. And all the characters are kind of moved around, but they're all there, and it's all you Christians, you've got it all wrong. We've got it right. You've got it all wrong. Okay. Again, I'm not going to go into any more than this, but do look up. I would have said there's a good, if you want a real quick blast through, there is a John MacArthur video which is on the Islamic Antichrist, I think it's called, or something like that. That's really, really good. And there's a pastor called Alan Nolan who does the same thing. So they're both big people, and I personally agree with them. I think that they are spot on, because I think once you hear the Islamic end times prophecy, you can't unsee that. You can't not see how obvious it truly is, and everything will start clicking. Okay, so that's very, very worthwhile. Even if you're just curious, that I would say look that up. It's really, really interesting. As I said, I'm going to finish that there, because this, as I said, was a reshoot anyway. But again, if you've got any questions, if you've got anything you want to comment on, as I said, I'm open to learning always. Again, I've only been a Christian for 2.5 years roughly, but I'm doing the best that I can, and by pulling in scriptures and stuff like that, a lot of it I am doing on. I keep saying it. I do it on the fly a lot of the time. I'll think of something, and I'll think of something else, and then I'll think of something else, and I'm like, what was my original point? I do that a lot, so I apologise if that sort of thing does irritate you. It's just like I often feel like I'm just led down a direction, and I almost stop myself and then think, oh, I feel like I need to go there. and so I do. So that's why a lot of these videos, where I intend them to be 15 minutes, end up being 30, and the 30-minute videos end up being an hour. But hopefully you get value out of those kind of diversions I go on, because then you're really getting into my mind as to what obviously I'm thinking, what I've read, and I have read some extra biblical stuff, but is cited in the Bible. So books like First Enoch, like Gad the Seer, like the Book of Jubilees, and others. And so that does help to shape a little bit more as well, because these are Dead Sea Scrolls, you know. So these are 200 BC, so they're before Christ. But they've got prophecy in them. There's all sorts of interesting stuff in there. But we never look at it as ever being God-inspired scripture. Okay. So yeah, that's how I leave it. That's how I will leave it. Okay, and I'll get another video to you as soon as I can, which may well be tomorrow morning, because I try to get up nice and early, get in a couple of videos if I can before work, and then I quite often do a little bit in the evening as well, which is why you'll see the same t-shirt over and over again, because I'm just packing them in. I checked, and actually over the last 3 days, I think it's 3 days, I've done something like 10 videos, something like that. It might be more than that. So yeah, so I'm getting through quite a few. So this will slow down. Obviously, once I've kind of gone through and I'm almost up to date, then these videos will come in quite slowly, like once a week, that kind of thing. But at the moment, I'm just basically getting the back catalogue on there, basically. Anyway, that's it. Okay, thanks a lot for your time and attention. Hopefully it was interesting, and I will hopefully see you in another video. All right.